It's Thursday, November the 27th, and on Loose Women today. A survey for this show has revealed that almost a quarter of all men say they have been abused by a partner. Men are often the forgotten victims in the war against domestic abuse. Well, today you'll hear from one man who suffered for 2 years at the hands of an abusive girlfriend. Now, back in September, we launched our domestic violence campaign, and only recently we heard from the family of Maria Stubbings here on our show, who died at the hands of her abusive partner. But, as we know, domestic violence isn't exclusive to just women.
Being attacked by a woman is not something I would like to talk about to others.
We're joined by Ian McNicholl, who was beaten so badly by his girlfriend he almost lost his arm and had to have cosmetic surgery to heal his horrific scars. But it's the mental scars that are a lot harder to repair. Hello, Ian. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Very welcome.
There's something so sad about hearing your story, because obviously we talk often about domestic abuse in the home. We talk long and hard about women suffering at the hands of violent men, but we don't hear stories like yours. Is it because you're ashamed at first to come forward and admit that it's happened to you?
I think for me, the biggest challenge, putting the fear to one side, and for many men, is actually believability.
Yeah.
And I think what we see is, quite rightly, lots of support for female victims.
Yeah.
But I think we can do more to encourage men to come forward. There is certainly a macho element within men who are not maybe comfortable speaking out. But for me, it's just about trying to get the message out that men are victims too.
And what happened to you? Just obviously, there was a catalogue of
Sure.
terrible injuries that were inflicted on you. Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, to put it into context, I mean, I had cigarettes were lit and stubbed out up my nose and on my chest. I had a kettle of water boiled and poured on me and reboiled. I was assaulted with a hammer, and I was assaulted with a steam iron, not once but 3 individual assaults, which have left me permanently scarred.
Why did you not speak out?
And I absolutely understand that question. It's so crucial. There's what I call a grooming process, where trust is established, there's an expression of emotion, you're made to feel like a king, but there's also really manipulative behaviour which isolates you from friends and family, and even possibly from work. And once the isolation has been nurtured, that gives the perpetrator control, and that's when the violence will start and escalate.
Is it sort of turned on its head in so much as that you feel like it was so nice before, it could almost be your fault that you've caused this behaviour, and if only because I've heard this from women, if only I was better, if I don't do that, then he won't act in this way.
Certainly whilst you're trying to keep the peace,
Yeah.
and that's a big challenge. As well, in my case, Michelle would say it was my fault. I didn't tell her that I loved her enough. I didn't show enough affection. That was the reason for the violence.
And did you believe it was your fault?
No, absolutely not.
Never did, no.
Absolutely not. I know I said I didn't.
Everything you're saying pertains to what we hear,
Sure.
what you were saying
Yeah.
about from female victims as well. But where it is very different, I believe, I know you went into a shelter,
Yes.
but was that with other women? Because actually shelters for men are almost non-existent, aren't they?
Certainly in my case, I believed I was in a refuge, but I actually woke the next morning to find out I was in a shelter for the homeless. And I was out on the streets, convinced I was being pursued and my life was in danger. And I remained homeless for 18 months.
Because there was no refuge at all
nowhere
for
to go.
men.
Absolutely nowhere to go.
Petrifying for you. Now, your ex did get put into prison.
Yes.
And how do you feel about her now? Because I had a very close friend who suffered domestic violence and would very much agree that, you know, she always said to me, everyone obsesses about the violence, but it's what he did to me first in my head to allow the violence. And so even though that's years ago she left, she's completely changed as a person and is frightened a lot of the time. Is that the same for you?
Certainly, obviously bruises fade, and broken bones mend, but the psychological scars do take a long time to heal.
Are you still frightened of her?
No, absolutely. I don't live in any fear at all.
Right.
Michelle's now released. She's on licence. She's not allowed to get in touch with me. If she does, she would go back to prison. And I certainly would have not denied Michelle any help because she clearly needed it. But I've moved on in that terms. There's no control over my life now.
Are you frightened of women, though? Because a lot of women who've been in this situation are frightened
Trusting.
of trusting again.
Yeah. And I think there's two interesting points. If I was still in fear of females today, Michelle would have been controlling my life. Trust is obviously an issue, and I think the big challenge is when I'm asked about scars that are still visible, I have to be honest in that response. And I've seen it firsthand that can be really distressing for people who hear what caused it. But you can't lie about it.
No.
So I think the challenge is more for a future partner to be mentally strong, to not be worried about me.
And you
for
help
them not to be in
other
fear.
men now, don't you?
Yes. Certainly, I think by speaking out, I hope to encourage other men to come forward in particular.
What would you say if there was a man watching now that was frightened? Because it is so much, I'm sure as we imagine, it's much harder for a man because there's all this, well, why didn't you just walk out? Why don't you just, you know, push her off? Why don't you?
Speak direct into the camera?
Yes, you can, yes. There we go, look at that.
What I would say, and I'm now speaking directly to the person who's experiencing abuse watching this programme, you're not to blame, you're not weak, and you're not alone. Please confide in someone or contact the police where there are specially trained domestic abuse officers there to help you. The action you take today will be changing your life, of that I can assure you.
Ian, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, if you've been affected by domestic violence, please go to our website. There's lots of information which is available to you. Still to come. He is the longest reigning king of rock. We're going to be catching up with Queen's Roger Taylor. We'll see you after this.